Greetings, Taku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you all yet again another Favorite Heroes video right here on Otaku Assemble Weekly. And as always, here to bring you the latest in this week's Favorite Heroes video segment. And this week, I decided to go ahead and discuss my favorite hero and favorite villain from the Yu Hakusho anime series. Now, I've already discussed these characters to some detail in my anime favorites Yu Hakusho video from, God, what, 5 years ago? But I decided that now was as good a time as any to sort of dedicate an individual video to each one of these characters and to go into a little bit more detail about why they are some of my favorite, not just my favorite characters from this series, but some of my favorite characters in anime, period. And the first one I wanted to discuss was none other than Karama. Now, what's curious about Karama, what's very interesting about him and interesting about the series in general. See, Yu Hakusho has the rare notoriety, at least for me, that it's one of the few anime where just about everybody in the cast I love. Like, I adore almost every character in this series. And as a matter of fact, I can't even think of one character that I just outright hate in the series. And Yu Hakusho, I do have to give the series this credit too, because Togashi does a really good job when he develops his characters as they aren't what you would necessarily think of them at first glance. Like, each character has more under the surface with each one of them. I mean, that's pretty much Yusuke, our main protagonist. That's his whole character arc throughout the entire story, is that he doesn't conform to the stereotypes that you would normally think of with that character. And many of the other characters are like that, right down from Kuwabara to Genkai, and Karama is no different. Because when we get introduced to Karama, Yusuke is in the middle of working a case where he has to retrieve, you know, these 3 artifacts that were stolen from Spirit World, right? And the very first criminal he encounters is pretty much what we would think of. You know, he's this big, hulking, grunting demon, and, you know, he eats souls, and he's just ruthless and whatnot, and Yusuke pretty much does away with him in like 5 minutes or what have you. Karama, on the other hand, this is when Yusuke actually has to take a step back. And now that I think about it, it's great foreshadowing for the type of villains that we would get later on in the series. But with Karama was interesting because we are led to believe that he's this, you know, hardened criminal, you know, this wanted demon by Spirit World and whatnot. But when we get introduced to him, I mean, first glance, he's a pretty boy. I mean, right down to every feminine feature, you know, that red hair of his, you know, the big eyes, you know, he wears a student's uniform. I mean, he isn't what you would normally consider to be a criminal of Spirit World. And then when we even find out why it was he committed the crime that he did, it was to save a human woman. It was to save his human mother. And it's not until after that that we start learning more about Karama's backstory, about how, you know, Karama used to be this hardened, you know, wanted by Spirit World, wanted throughout Demon World, this great, grand demon fox thief and whatnot, until he was mortally wounded and had to flee inside the body of an infant human. All of this stuff we find out after after we're initially introduced to him, and it really does start to question, like, oh wow, you know, once again, going back to what I said, there's more than what's on the surface. And even then, how does that very first episode with Karama, it ends with him willing to sacrifice himself in order to save the life of his human mother. So off top, Togashi does a good job as letting us know he's not a bad guy. Yes, he's doing a bad thing, but he's doing it for a good reason. And that's just the start of the sort of complexity that we get with Karama's character. And once again, when Karama resurfaces during the 4 Saint Beasts arc, Karama, even though he's on this sort of work release program with Spirit World, he still wants to aid Yusuke and Kuwabara. He still wants to help, unlike Hiei, who clearly he's only doing it so that he can, you know, knock off some years off the time he owes with Spirit World. And then even going into the Dark Tournament, and especially by the time we get into Chapter Black, like, it doesn't take long for Karama to want to be a part of the team and want to actually do good in the world. Right then and there, that made him an interesting character. And the more time we spend with Karama, you know, the more things that we find out about, you know, once we start learning more about his history as Yoko Kurama, and then especially once we get introduced to Yoko Kurama, wow, I mean, they seem like two completely separate characters, which will bring me to my next topic of what another thing I dug about Kurama is this sort of like this not just this duality with him, but these sort of multiple personas that Kurama has in the series. So Kurama, in my opinion, Kurama actually has 3 personalities in the series, and I think even he points this out at some point in time in the series, where there's Suichi Minamoto, which is his human persona, and that's pretty much like his secret identity. That's the persona that he uses in order to be able to fit in and to acclimate himself on Earth in the human realm with other humans, right? And then there's Yoko Kurama, which is his full-blown demon self, and that's the one that is, you know, this feared figure in demon world and whatnot. And we see how cunning and ruthless Yoko Kurama is once we get to the Dark Tournament. And then there's Kurama, who is actually a blend of both of them. And it's really interesting because with that he has all of these different qualities that the other 2 characters have all boiled up in one little persona. So number 1, he is soft-hearted. He does care for other people. But number 2, he is also very vengeful, and he is also very ruthless when it calls for it. I mean, Chapter Black, when we see what happens with Game Master, and when we see how he deals with Elder Togoro, like, that's both sides of Kurama coming out right then and there. So some other things that, you know, those sort of qualities contribute to, you know, Kurama has a strong sense of justice. He has a strong sense of right and wrong, as he displays in Chapter Black, when he has to deal with what has happened to Game Master, and when he has to deal with Elder Togoro, when he finds out that Elder Togoro was sort of behind the scenes of what was going on this entire time. Like, he has absolutely no problem with being as ruthless to those who inflict that sort of damage on the innocent. Like, Kurama does not play that game, and is one of the things I love about him. Another thing I love about him that he doesn't lose in any one of his personas is his intellect. Kurama is the brains of the team throughout the entire series. And once again, sort of in many ways, like I discussed Azula in my favorite villains video last time, like how methodical Kurama really is, you know. Even like we see it multiple times during the Dark Tournament. I think more so we see it during the Dark Tournament, is like how he's able to strategize in the middle of battle, and how he's able to sort of anticipate what it is his opponent is going to do, and how he always tries to get, you know, 3 steps ahead. And I mean, there are many, I mean, hell, even in the finals when he has to go up against Karasu, like how he's able to gauge, you know, whether or not he can actually beat Karasu. But at the same time, though, I also like how Kurama's pragmatic. He doesn't just think that his intellect alone will win in certain conflicts, nor does he think that his brute strength will make him prevail in conflicts, contrary to Hiei, which is why Karami and Hiei, they work so well as a duo. They really bounce off of each other really well, because they're polar opposites in that exchange. But you know, Kurama, he's pragmatic. He very much acknowledges the dangers that he put himself in, and he does not underestimate his opponents. Never does he underestimate his opponents. You know, going into the Dark Tournament when he knew he'd have to go up against Karasu, like he was, you know, remember, Kurama's the one who checks out Team Togoro's fights, because he understands, it's like, no, we need to learn who these people are, we need to learn what they're capable of, and we need to find a way in order to beat them, because brute strength won't do it alone. Also, fast forward to Saga of the Three Kings, you know, Kurama constantly, with his reunion with Yomi, like he is constantly trying to calculate, okay, what is Yomi going to do? You know, okay, what is this person going to do? What are they going to do? What are my chances of success here? What are my chances of success there? And he is constantly going over, you know, over these things. And like I said, even with his reunion with Yomi, because that's another relationship in the series, especially with Kurama's relationships with other characters, that is interesting from start to finish. And going back to what I previously said about how Kurama has that strong sense of justice, it's not one-sided either. Like, Kurama knows when he's messed up, when he's made a mistake, like he knows what to expect or what should be expected, you know, when he meets back up with Yomi, the whole time he's like, you know what? I might die. Yomi has every right to kill me, and rightfully so. I tried to kill him. I tried to take him out. For him to exact retaliation, that is totally within the realm of possibility, and he would be in the right on that. That's why Kurama doesn't hesitate to fight for Yomi, to serve his side, because so far as he's concerned, he is making amends for a discretion that he took against Yomi all those years ago. And that probably brings me to one of my final points about Kurama that I really like, is that, you know, Kurama in many ways, his entire character, remember how I said how Yusuke's entire character arc was sort of proving that he wasn't what everybody wrote him off as? Kurama, in that same idea, is that his entire character arc is one of redemption and one of atonement. You know, he as Kurama, as this new persona, is sort of trying to make up for the crimes and for the sins of Yoko Kurama. And I think that is a huge driving force in many of the things that he does, and many of the steps he takes and actions and decisions that he makes throughout the story. And in many ways, funny enough, because they're both redheads, it makes me think about another one of my all-time favorite anime characters, Kenshin Himura, from the Rurouni Kenshin series. Kurama and Kenshin have a lot in common in that idea that they aren't necessarily punishing themselves, but they do go out of their way to try and make amends for their previous transgressions. And that's admirable. It's admirable of those characters. So for the most part, that's going to go ahead and wrap up my thoughts on Kurama, and that's going to wrap up this Favorite Heroes video. I want to thank you all for joining me again this week, and please, in the comments below, leave your thoughts on Kurama. Let me know what some of your favorite characters from the Yu Hakusho series are. Please feel free to share your favorite heroes in this video. And with that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, signing off, and until next time, peace.